Ooh, it's a good one. Let's hit it head on. Let's read the scripture. Let your women keep silent in churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but they are to be submissive, as the law says. And if they want to learn something, let them ask their own husbands at home, for it is shameful for a woman to speak in church. I wonder if this scripture's ever caused any problem in any churches. Only a lot of it. But here's the thing. We have to look at scripture as a whole. We cannot pick out one scripture and say, well, then that means it's an entirety of a picture. And let's bring up a scripture about women speaking in church. Flip back to 1 Corinthians 11:5. But every woman who prays or prophesies. We'll stop there because I don't want to start a whole other debate. But this is talking about corporate worship. So at some point, women are speaking in church, usually from the front, praying and prophesying at the very least. So how do we reconcile these two scriptures? Because one is obviously saying women shouldn't speak in church, and the other one is saying that women not only can speak in church, but they can speak directly as God's mouth. And the issue was primarily cultural. Though we should not look at scripture and say, well, that was cultural. The culture is important in the context here. Because if we start going, that was cultural, and reading with a Sharpie, we're going to lose a lot of what scripture's actually saying. But in order to explain this, I think we need to look at the Corinthian culture. And in their culture, women were not allowed to confront men in public places. But because there was so much freedom in Jesus, and that women are upheld so beautifully in what the church actually teaches, or the Bible actually teaches, that freedom that women were finding likely was causing a little bit too much freedom and going against the culture. Think about if you're in the middle of a church service and the pastor says something and the people next to you start talking to each other and going, what do you think that means? What do you think that means? Do you think that has to do something with us? It's distracting, right? It's the same kind of concept here. And since it was women doing it to men, that's why the women were called out for it. Don't worry, men are called out for way more in the Bible than women are even remotely called out for. Though I understand a lot of denominations have not communicated that well. But the reason Paul brought this up was not for further division, but was actually in the spirit of unity. He was trying to say there should be order to a church service, so it's okay not to have all the answers when you're there. Just ask when you get home. But let's read this from a different point of view. Those women felt such freedom for the first time to be able to find their voices in a way they had not found before and still didn't find in their culture outside of the church. I guess another way to think about it is think about when you left your parents' home for the first time. A lot of people kind of go crazy before they pull it back in and realize where the boundaries are. I kind of think these women were doing that. And they just needed to remember where their boundaries were. And I actually believe this to be true both for Judaism and Christianity. If you look at what scripture teaches, it's actually a beautiful picture of what God does through women. But unfortunately, years of twisted scripture and church hurt has painted a different picture we need to fix.